Coming up in episode 11, I'm going to talk about how players learn and how they can actually improve and get better. It's time to attack.
Welcome to the Grit Hoops Podcast, powered by Grit Basketball, where passion meets performance. This is the show for players, coaches, and parents who are committed to real development, elite skills, and the mindset it takes to win. We break down the game, cut through the myths, and give you the tools to maximize potential on and off the court. If you're ready to put in the work and take your game to the next level, let's get to it.
Welcome back to another episode of the Grit Hoops Podcast. I'm Coach Kerry. If it's your first time listening, welcome. If you're a returning listener, welcome back. So the question I ask you, do you ever wonder why your son or daughter's skills are not translating to games? Or coaches, do you ever wonder why your players are getting very minimally better year in, year out? You might see a slight improvement, but kids aren't coming back with drastic new skills unless they went off, they had a trainer, or they did significant work on themselves. But why is growth and performance so limiting and so hard to come by? And I believe from my research, and I'll also reference some other research that shows people and players don't get better from performing and doing the task all the time. What we subscribe to currently is just doing the task, playing the game, going out, and if it's karate, let's say, putting a kid in a fight to just do a match 1v1. It doesn't matter what the task is. If it's playing a musical instrument, doing a performance approach would be throwing a person or player into performance, not focusing on the development on a daily basis and the improvement and the deliberate practice. We know this sounds silly when I put it that way, right? You'll never just put people in performance mode all the time, but that is actually what we do. I know kids that are playing on 1, 2, 3 teams at very young ages where they should be focusing on their development, not focusing so much on games. The emphasis and the idea that players drastically improve from games is very misleading. Now, time to reference the research, okay? And you will see in the show notes, we'll add a TED Talk and we'll add a podcast that talks about this topic. And it's Eduardo, Briceño discussing how people actually learn. And he talks about that there's 2 zones. There's performance zone and there's a learning zone. Performance zone is where people are trying to do a task to the best of their ability, not make mistakes, be as efficient as they can. Learning zone is where you want to make mistakes, you want to challenge yourself. It's not about a result, it's about growth. They're 2 opposing philosophies. They're 2 opposing methods of learning. Performance zone is not there to focus on growth. It's to focus on results. So how did your kid do in the game? Did they win the game? And this is the mode that most coaches are locked into, unfortunately, because of the ego, the pressure to win the games, how we put our identity into winning or losing the game. So we get caught up in this performance zone. And we sometimes don't realize that our players are not growing and learning because we have to create a more learning or developmental zone within our practices and at times within our games. If we focus more to get players within these learning zones, we will see drastic improvements. How do I know? It's because this is what we do at Grit. People wonder, how do kids get so much better? We train hundreds of kids, hundreds of players, and every player drastically improves month in, month out, year in, year out. We actually had several players this season that did not play on teams and focused on their development, and they had the most growth they have seen ever after playing the game for years. So this understanding of performance zones versus learning zones is very important, especially for youth players. And when we say youth, I'm referring to middle school, high school, even college, their development. Professional players already know this. Sometimes you get a freak athlete that sneaks through the cracks and they just played and their skills are probably lacking, but they've made it at a high level. But most, if very high percentage of professional players live in the learning zone. They're always training, always practicing, always developing their shot and developing their craft. I hope this message hits home with parents because I know you're all out there looking to find out what can be the separator to help your kid perform better in games. And I know it sounds crazy, but it's not playing in more games. Playing in games is just going to reinforce the same things that they're either good or bad at. It's not going to lead to growth. It's not going to lead to development. One of our trainers, Coach Isaiah, he actually just gave me a call. I had to brush off. Always talks about the balance between playing games and training. That's also something to think about. But one thing I'll add to that is a lot of players are very underdeveloped. And if you're underdeveloped, what do you think should be the balance between playing and development? I'll just leave that up to you. We know the answer to that. If you are behind on your development, your focus should be on development until you get yourself to a sufficient level where now, okay, we could add in some more gameplay. Okay, we can start balancing. You never ditch development. You add in a little bit more here or there. But your focus as an athlete, as a young man or woman trying to get better in school, your focus in your career as a husband, as a wife, anything should be growth, getting better, and improving. So to preference this topic, I hope players, parents, and coaches could try to adapt a more learning zone approach. Okay? Try to adapt a more growth-minded approach. And now that I mentioned growth mindset, the mentor of Eduardo Briceño, for those of you that enjoy this topic of learning, is Carol Dweck. Carol Dweck came out with a book called Mindset. It's another strong recommendation that I have. It's a book on our website that's a must read, and we strongly recommend it. The book Mindset talks about that there's two types of mindsets. There's a growth mindset and there's a fixed mindset. A fixed mindset is a player or a person that believes their knowledge is set, that they're at a certain level, they're smart or they're dumb. They're good at math or they're bad at math. They believe it's a fixed mindset. A person with a growth mindset believes that challenge is good and they're constantly growing to become better at any skill. So shifting our mindsets as a leader, especially coaches and parents, will help the player and the athlete shift their mindset to more of a growth mindset. What are some things we can do to reinforce this? some things, and I see some parents doing it now that we train. Super proud to see the parents of the kids that we're training. They're starting to reinforce players just trying things, whether they're successful or not. Trying things that they've trained. They're not just rewarding results. They're rewarding the effort. They're rewarding the hard work. That is the key to growth. Because without having the bravery and the mindset to put yourself out there and to try new things, you're not going to get growth. So that's my challenge to everyone, coaches, parents, and players. Challenge yourself to continuously work on your craft and get into learning zones more than performance zones. Okay? And then lastly, challenge yourself to have a growth mindset, not a fixed one. Don't define yourself by failure. Don't define yourself by where you currently are and trying to perfect where you are. Define yourself by what you're growing to become.
Basketball players and coaches, want to take your finishing to an elite level? The Grit Elite Finisher course is your fast track to mastering layups with both hands, finishing through contact, and making every shot count. This step-by-step program gives you lifetime access to high-level training and downloadable resources, helping you go from struggling at the rim to finishing with confidence in just weeks. Don't just take our word for it. Players like Diamond Miller of the Minnesota Lynx, Tucker Richardson, playing pro in Europe, Olivia Miles from Notre Dame, Jalen Blakes, played at Duke and Stanford, and Michaela Blakes. At Vanderbilt, they have all sharpened their skills through elite training like this. For just $2.99, you get everything you need to elevate your game. Ready to finish strong? Sign up for the Grit Elite Finisher course today at gritbasketball.com. That's gritbasketball.com.
This topic to me is super, super important. The key to all of this for our young athletes and for our coaches to be the best coaches and for our parents is to perform deliberate practice as much as we can. Deliberate practice is basically training. I know many of you that listen to this podcast may not be in a grit session, but go watch a local trainer that's a very good trainer. It doesn't matter what the sport is. Go watch them. You'll see deliberate practice. Some coaches will have deliberate practice incorporated in their practices when it pertains to basketball. Okay, deliberate practice will be things more broken down and it's more developmental based when it comes to the individual's performance. It's not so much team based or strategy based. It's more geared to help the player add skills and improve as an overall basketball player or whatever sport it is. Okay, so trying to incorporate more deliberate practice is essential. And like I stated before, knowing what you need to focus on. Most kids should be focusing probably 90 to 100% of their time on development, especially as they're beginning out with their journey, with their sport. And there's countless stories of this. I can even mention, I love the movie King Richard. I don't know if you saw King Richard, with the father of Serena and Venus Williams. He literally said no tournaments. They were two of the better players. Everybody wanted them to play in tournaments, wanted them to go on the circuit. This is what everyone does. And he said, no, we are focusing on development. I was fortunate enough to work with Pro Shot years ago with working on shooting. And Pro Shot worked with Karl Anthony Towns at a young age. You might not even remember. It was 7th grade, 8th grade, around those ages. And he was taller. Karl Anthony Towns is an NBA player. He played on Timberwolves, got traded recently to the Knicks. But Karl Anthony Towns was taller than everyone, and everyone wanted to stick him in the post. His dad, and mom decided to take him off of AAU and work on his shooting, work on his skills, his dribbling. They had a bigger picture in mind. They stopped playing AAU. They stopped, but even about AAU. It's not, AAU is not a negative thing. It's not like we talked about in previous episodes. But they stopped playing in games and they focused on development. So they got out of the performance zone and they went into the learning zone for a period of time, a year and a half, 2 years. And then the most famous person to do this was Steph Curry. If you listen to Del Curry, he said Steph was not doing well in games. He was scrawny. He was not the biggest. He wasn't performing well. He's like, my boys need to focus on development. They need to get their skills better. And Steph Curry took time away from games and focused on development, focused on his overall growth. So he entered that learning zone, got rid of performance zone for a period of time. And I'm not saying you should always just get rid of performance zone. There's times, and I think the best thing of performance zone is that it is fun to play games. So that is, it's a reward, right? It's a reward. You get to play in games, but I think if we truly want long-term success within anything, I do think we need to prepare better and not just throw kids into these performance zones and throw kids into this performance style of development. And to sum everything up, often we hear complaints from professional players, coaches, and they say basketball in America is not the best. It's broken, and we're still producing very good basketball players. They're very skilled and talented, right? But most of them are their dads or moms or former professional athletes or NBA players, and they kept them in a learning zone, right? So they become really good players. But all these complaints about youth basketball and the path in which it's going is basically this. We spend too much time having 4th and 5th graders in tournaments, flying around the country, and 6th graders and 7th graders, even 8th graders, and they're doing all these tournaments. College coaches are not recruiting 6th, 7th graders, 8th graders, even 9th graders, unless you're a top player in the country. So all those years would be more beneficial to focus on a learning zone and a performance instead of a performance zone. Okay, so hopefully that is a takeaway that you can step away from the game, especially at those younger ages, and focus on your development. If you find a coach that focuses on development and does a lot of development in their practices, hold on to that coach, because that coach cares about how good each one of his players becomes, his or her players become. So hold on to that coach, because that coach is going to continue to help your son or daughter, and they're going to continue to help all the other kids that are fortunate enough to have a coach that focuses on development. Today in our post-game press conference, I want to talk about an anonymous text message that I received actually today. The message states, "My son is not performing as high level as I believe he can in games. I am not sure why. I think he's nervous and hesitant. I think I should put him on a lower level team so that he can gain confidence to do better, so hopefully he can play on his varsity team. What do you recommend?" My answer to this is to reference back to what Eduardo Briceño and Dweck talked about, is we got to get him in more of a learning zone. This young athlete just started training with us. He has several months under his belt. So what it sounds like is, Dad, you're looking for him to start producing and showing all these skills in games after doing them for a couple months. And that's not how it works. I do wish it worked like that. That would be great. Wish we had a secret potion. But I don't think any trainer has that secret potion, and no kid can do that. Some kids do show a higher level of performance quicker, and some kids take a little longer. But at this current point, my recommendation to you is, number one, he's not ready. He should be spending more time in learning zones. So my recommendation is he should be training 3 to 5 days a week and not doing as much team play. My last recommendation, or my second recommendation, would be to focus less on how he performed and focus more on him just trying and doing things that he's training. So that ties into having more of a growth mindset. So whether he misses or makes a shot, or whether he tries to drive and he turns it over, don't focus so much on that, right? Obviously, I don't think you should throw him in games until he's more sufficient and developed at those skills. But if he is playing in a game, he has a fall league game, tell him just focus on the process of doing things instead of the result. Focusing on the result brings extra pressure. It brings anxiety to perform. It's just not the best approach. So those two recommendations, hopefully they make sense. Once again, try to get to training more, 3 to 5 days a week. And don't focus so heavily on performance. Focus more on growth, a growth mindset. Okay, and focus more on just doing little skills in situations that you know he's working on. So you're seeing little baby steps and little progress throughout the journey. We want to answer your questions and emails on the podcast. So email us at podcast@gritbasketball.com, and we'll feature your question on a future show. Thank you for listening to the episode of this podcast. Hope you got value from today's episode. Share it with someone who you think will also get value. In the next episode, I'm excited to share a conversation with one of our recently professional. In the next episode, I'm excited to share a conversation that I recently had with Tucker Richardson, a grit player, a collegiate athlete. He played at Colgate, and currently a professional basketball player in Europe. We talked about several topics that I know you'll find super interesting, especially pertaining to development. And if you don't know Tucker is a professional level shooter. So if you're into shooting, this is the episode. So hope you catch that next episode. Thank you for listening. And remember, attack first.
That's a wrap for this episode of the Grit Hoops Podcast. If you found value in today's conversation, be sure to subscribe or follow so you never miss an episode. Got questions or topics you want us to cover? Hit us up at gritbasketball.com/podcast or connect with us on social media. And remember, greatness isn't given, it's earned. Keep putting in the work, attack first, and we'll see you next time.